Talking about after images. Check it. It's looking pretty sweet. So I posted a picture of this the other day. Got a lot of feedback, so people are interested. So let's figure out how we do it. I just sort of did it on a whim, usually on like at work a few days in succession. And on the last day, I usually do just sort of fun stuff. And I don't know, it all just came together real simply. So let's just get started. Let's check the levels here. All right. So all you're doing, a lot of people, like I see this question a lot. It's like, how do you make it stay in place? Well, it's not updated, right? It's just, I mean, it is, but we don't do anything with it. So we just drop it in place, and then we animate other things about it. We don't animate the physics and stuff. You can if you like, but that's how you get that effect. It's real simple. You just drop it in there, and then you just leave it alone. You do other things like fade it out and stuff. So let's go step by step. I'm not going to start from scratch because I don't know, I run into problems when I do that, but we'll go kind of like how I went when I first did it. So what we want is an Afterimage effect. You can see there's a bit of a bug. Swords are interchangeable, so I'll have to figure out how to do that. You might want to make a list and it just updates everything in the character. We'll figure it out. So basically we have our character here. I have semi-complex like parent structure here. There's the HUD and some shadow projectors and some other stuff. So I just have this draw thing. So this is going to be, game dependent. And I was trying to find a way to make this more dynamic, but there's just so many little factors that you need different for the actual afterimage object that I recommend making a prefab. So what I do, again, this is going to be game dependent. Whoops, looks just like the scene. Just grab that. I made a copy of it, just duplicated it. You can do Control D. And then I did add component right on top here. And it's going to be Afterimage. So you'll be doing this if you do your own thing. I'll add that Afterimage component there. And then drag it down and make it a new prefab. I'll just go ahead and delete that. So that's what we have here. So it's a copy of a lot of the stuff that's on there. You're gonna want the animator, and you're gonna need the armature, and you're gonna need the model. So this is for skin meshes. You could do it without it, without a skin mesh, and you wouldn't need your animator and stuff. If you just had like a ball or something flying around that just left an afterimage. So what is that afterimage script? So let's bring it up. It has some basic things like the animator and the renderer. It has its own, and then it has the target one. Sorry, a dog just started barking like crazy. Kids are probably knocking on the door. Like I try and do, it's like some days no barking, and then just whenever I do a video. Let's see here. So we have the animator that's actually animating the afterimage. Because what we're doing is that we're copying all the animation state stuff and then, just applying it to this more simple object. Because, our regular like character object, has a lot more complex stuff on there. It has these controllers and stuff. But we're going to do much simpler stuff, much simpler rendering. You can do the same kind of rendering. We'll go through that. So I'm trying to think here. You need your Afterimage prefab, and you also need a pool controller. So you have Afterimage pool here as well. So if we jump into there, we see that we have a list of Afterimages. We have the game object prefab. And then this character control is, again, that's just specific to my game. You could delete this, and I'll have a more generic version for you. And instead of like my character control, component, you just do like get component. Again, it's so game specific that it's just something you'll have to figure out what works for your game. But basically, this supplies the original renderer, and it's just a mesh. It's not necessarily like the renderer. And the animator. So it's more like the game object, and it's the game object and the animator. Again, the renderer is going to be a little bit different. It's still like a skin mesh renderer, but we're going to apply different effects to it. So the pool start, and we just drop this pool on the character where we want it. I don't know that it matters too much. We're going to be instantiating it. The reason I have it on the character is just that it looks at the root of the character it's on and then finds these things. So the first thing it does after that is it creates a list of those after images, and they're just game objects at first. Well, I guess these ones are after images. Forgive me, it is after image. Then we have a pool size. It's just something you'll have to figure out what works for you. It could be a lot of different things. What do we have? 30 or so? I don't even think I need that many. Then it goes through. It makes an instance of that prefab. So this prefab was the one down here in our, our project. Again, I was trying to find a way to do it from here, and I kind of got it to work, but some of the rendering stuff was annoying. It got way too complicated. It's very doable. It's just something that was easier just to make a new prefab. The problem is that you'd have to do that for every character that might need it, but in my game, only like Kate and maybe some bosses might have it. And Ace's Wild is a little easier because it was just simple sprites that you had to pass to it, so just look at a sprite and I could just draw them all over the place. So, takes a pool size, instantiates that prefab, it adds that to the list, and then on that actual object, it finds the after image script that we added and does my character control.character. Again, it would be something else. It would just be character. Like this would be your game object in the prefab. Well, not in the prefab. It's in your target. Like it gets a little complicated. Game object target. So the target is like our original character that we're drawing, and then this is animator target. It's called character here because that's just what I called it in my own script. So that's why I just decided to put a little label there. So, it adds that to the target. And then in the actual after image, we also have my renderer and my animator. So we want to make sure these are new. That's what was difficult in making it a little more dynamic, is that it kept looking at the original's animator. But the way it's set up here, and again, you could fix it. It was... Sorry, I lost my train of thought. But basically, it's doing its own rather than looking at the original, which we need. We want to reference that original, but we don't want it to be that exact original. So what happens is we hit play, the afterimage pool starts, and it makes a big pool. They're all down here, 30 or whatever I have. And they're copies of this instance down here, this prefab that we made. What the pool does, it just manages them all. There's a little bit of management within itself, each after image, but the pool, has all these. It loops through it every update. This is just a specific thing, so they pause when there's hit pause in my game. It updates a timer. If it's bigger than the interval, then it'll add an after image. So if we look here, this is our spacing now. If we increase the interval to 5, they're spaced out a lot more. You could make this dynamic so that, as an effect is more intense, it goes down to 0, and so you have like a ton of them. That might be too much or whatever. 5 actually looked better than I thought. It's kind of cool. Because that choppiness can give you contrast and give you pop, so it's just another thing to keep in mind. When it adds an Afterimage, it looks at this script. Well, first of all, it goes through the pool, finds one that's active or not, and I don't use the game object enabled. I use my own active bool in the Afterimage script. It's just faster. I think there's ways to do enabled better, but it's when you enable and disable the base Unity game object stuff, there's some lag. There's some processing that happens that I don't understand totally. So go to activate. Make that one true. And so it looks through the pool, finds one that's not active, and makes it active. And then it breaks out. Make sure you break out here. That's something I always forget. Because if you don't, then you just find all inactive ones and make them active, and you get a mess. So here's where that, sort of the main behavior of these Afterimages happen. We set the same position. So again, we have our position, we have our target one. And this one is the actual original character. Then we have our own. That's, we have my animator. It's going to be more important on the animator. We set the position based on the world position. Again, we don't parent these. It might be nice if we could parent it to the pool. You might want that. You could. The problem was that I had the pool parented, so you could unparent that after it loads, and then if you wanted. Local scale of it equal to the lossy scale. You can't set lossy scale because it's like a amalgamation of all the different scales and like based on the parenting and hierarchy. And then rotation, same thing, just copies the rotation. And then we grab the animator and we hit play. So we could take this out. Oh, it's still updating. So maybe I just made the code faster. Is everything working okay? Yeah, you can see some stuff not working properly. So you can see we're getting like some stuff that's not the normal behavior there. I was hoping it would be totally static. I wanted to show that off real quick. But I'm setting these parameters, so let's do that real quick just to give you an idea of like what is happening. So let's just be her standing. Yeah. So this is what you get when you're not like updating the animator. And if you had something more simple, then maybe you wouldn't need this. You would just, this would be fine. If you found this was too intensive, or you just don't have an animator and that whatever object. So hit play there. We grab our target, the one from the actual player character, animator state info. These layers are just going to be depending on your game. Short name hash. This is where it starts, I believe. Let's see. Oh no, that's the layer again. So it's, we have the layer of this and then this layer. Sorry, the dog will not stop barking. These kids keep knocking on the door. We grab the current normalized time of that, so that way we're not starting at the beginning of that animation when we hit play. Sorry, this dog's freaking out. I'm gonna have to stop for a sec. One sec. Sorry about that. Usually he just quits, but these kids keep knocking on the door. These dang kids. Anyway, refresh that stream real quick. And a lot of this isn't maybe that interesting, but I don't know, the point of the video is to show it off, and then the point of the download is for you to just have it. So, but to cover some things that might not be clear. So here is another important part. We have an animator controller parameter. So when you have your controller for your animators, you have all these parameters that you have to set for dynamic stuff. So like when she's running, you know, we have for her idle state, we have walk and run. And for hit effects, it's even more dynamic because it's all blended, at least what I do. So these are all like the different blend states for, you know, those sorts of like blended animations. You also set the speed to 0 here on the animator. You can take that out and it gives you a neat little effect that you may enjoy. So that pauses it while it's running. You know, the animator's playing out on the after images. Like, you can see there's something pretty sweet about that too. So that might be something you like. You could also set it to slower or faster if you wanted. You could set it to faster based on their position or slower based on their position. Based on their, like, I say position, but like their, you know, lifespan. So, you know, it's just another thing to have. Looks pretty dope in its own way. I could see keeping it that way actually. But standard thing here is just to set it to 0. On the after images, after all this activate happens, time equals time max plus 1, and then I run an update. I was just worried that it wasn't like updating right away. I didn't really test it too much, but it was just to make sure that it updated then when it came into be. And I made the timer plus 1 just so the time was like specific. So time max is just something you set here. You could set it in the pool too, which is probably better. A lot of this you would probably set at the pool level if you wanted. And then just govern it based on the pool rather than have it specific to here. It's just how when I was going through the code, I started with the base after image thing. So time max, you know, set it to however you want them to be. Then as it updates, basically just counts that down. I just have a simple animation here. Intensity. You know, it's equal to time divided by time max times 10, so that way the maximum is 10 and minimum 0. Times pow, which is like another little offset I could have. And then I update the renderer. And here, all I do is set the intensity and the glow power to this original intensity thing that I have here. What I'd like to do, maybe we'll do it at the end of the video here, is have a gradient and then just an animation timeline. And it would just read that gradient. And that way you could set colors and things too. And then you could even do it for like intensity. You could even like drop in a texture, maybe read from that. It would, you know, that's up to you. We'll get to some other animation stuff too that you can do. That's a little bit fun. Because once you have all these set up in a pool, you're working with particles now. There might be a possibility that you could just use the particle system to do it, but I'm not quite sure. Just giving our pooch mercy. It's just been naughty, I don't know why. So once the time is up, I set active to false, and that's not the game object again. This is our own active bool here. And then set the intensity to 0 because that's basically that means it won't draw at all, basically. I mean, it's still drawing, but it's... and you may find that you want to totally turn off the renderer when that happens. Based on some overlap stuff, because I show some different rendering effects that we can do. It gets a little complicated when you're doing transparencies and stuff. What I personally like is this flat blending. So I haven't even spoken of that yet. We have, our after images here. And one of the reasons we wanted prefab for it was so we could just have the renderer set here too, using the material that we like. So this is, the original is pretty simple. Just have a color and intensity. I have these glows here. I'll show it off, but there were some problems that we ran into. It was still, there's a stencil thing that I'll explain too. Actually, I'll explain that right now. So I was going through, this was the last little touch I added. This was like new to me, and it was really cool when I found it out. I mean, it's not new to me, remember, so. Trying to get a cool jump going here. Gotta put my hands weird so I can pause it. So we have a jump here, right? That's looking pretty cool. But you'll notice that these fall behind the character. And that was the idea. So even though these are all in 3D, they draw behind the character, which is awesome. It just creates way more clarity. Clarity is just super important in games. More and more stuff starts flying around the screen. Keeping it clear is really important. So I'll explain that in a minute. So yeah, what was I getting at? Anyway, the shader itself. The initial one is just a color. It takes that model, skin mesh, draws a color, multiplies it by intensity. Oh yeah, what I was explaining is that the glow, again, I use this MK Glow. It's a free asset on the asset store. The stencil wasn't working on it. The base would get cut out, but the glow would still draw full, and I couldn't fix it. Ideally, you would have this like rim outline, and it would be pretty tight, and then these would all glow. I'll show it off, but there's some bugs with it. That's what I'm getting at. And I like that opaque look, but we'll show off some other stuff. This one's opaque. We have a transparent one here. Is there a glow on that one? Doesn't look like it. So you have effects like this. This might seem a little more familiar, or yeah, I guess familiar would be the right word. If you don't like the mask, change the layer. So what we're using is a Stencil Mask. It's a twofold process. Your original thing that you want to stencil out has to draw to the stencil buffer. You get like 8 layers. I don't know totally how it works, but so we're on mask layer 2. And so anything on mask layer 2 gets edited out, gets discarded. So on our character drawer, we have this stencil pass here, and we have to add these new stencil properties to the shader. Or have that on the drawing. You only really need the mask layer. There's probably more complicated stuff you could do. So basically, as it draws, it's also drawing to the stencil layer. And then when the after images draw, it checks that stencil layer and decides if it gets discarded or not. But if we turn it off, maybe you like that, but you can get some weird stuff where it's drawn on top like that. That's up to you if you don't have that available in your game. The original pop-in could be lower opacity, so you don't have that, but then you still have it so they're drawing in front when it's in front, you know what I mean? You can see it's drawing behind this horse because they're on draw layer 1, and I set the after images. So even though it's on top of us, it's drawing behind the horse. Get some weird stuff going on there. But Stencil Masks are cool. That's what got me so excited when I first posted the effect. What was I gonna do? So yeah, we have this one here. We have this one. I'll provide two examples. This one is a gradient map. So basically it takes the texture data, the grayscale of it. It actually just looks at the R. And then the R channel. And then blends it between these two colors. They're really dark because I have the intensity up really high. And that allows me to easily, go from this to this. Did I set that? I did. So then you have stuff like this, where you actually have the texture drawn on there. That can look really cool. Right now it's opaque, but we can more of a blended look. Like before, it uses pre-multiplied blending, so you can go in between. So that can look really cool. It's really ghost-like. Let's push that a little further. The idea of like ghost-like. That going on. It's pretty neat. And we could go one step further. Whoops. Sorry, everything's named Afterimage. Like that. You have it where it keeps going. That looks pretty neat. Again, you could change the timings a bit. Could do like you actually might want to like check the speed and then multiply it by a value instead. It's kind of going to depend on your own system. So you could check the speed of the current animator and then just multiply it by an amount. So now we have these ones that are going slower. So they kind of lag behind, and so you get more of that look. Let's draw on 1, 2. So yeah, I mean, it's probably pretty explanatory at this point. Again, it's set up. Now that you have a pool of things to work with, you can do some sort of particle-y sort of things. Oh yeah, I was going to show the glow. Again, it's kind of cool, but it's not rendering properly. Something I couldn't quite figure out yet. Excuse me. It wasn't stenciling correctly. There's one way it kind of got it to work, but you can see how it's popping in front. And I didn't turn up the glow very high. Do like this. You'll see something like that going on. You can take it a step further, go like this, and actually don't have a main color. And, you make it black. You actually have a main color, it's just black. But it's pre-multiplied, so it's drawing. Again, you get some weird, see, they're cropping themselves a little bit. That's something I need to fix. But then you just have the glow. And even that by itself can look pretty neat. Some different things to do there. Let's set it back to this one and do some other stuff. So we can, here's just a simple one that I did. Much like particles, we can control other aspects of it and get some neat effects. So you have something like this going on. You can see they're kind of cropping themselves. You'd want to mess with the shader a little bit so they wouldn't do that, so they wouldn't cut themselves out. So yeah, that can look pretty cool. Basically it's just growing. Popping that off real quick during an attack instead of just like constantly going would look pretty hot. And even that just by itself, doesn't look too bad. Could even go nuts and drop some glow on there. Want scaling up, see what that gives us. We're gonna get some weird stencil interaction stuff, so the cutouts might look kind of weird. Yeah, you can see. So maybe we won't just draw that for now. Sorry if the chat is just not like showing anything. Like, we're having some issues. There's kind of. Let me try and fix that real quick. Right off. I'm not sure why it's doing that. Not sure. Anyway, the glow's hard to deal with. It's getting cut off in weird points, and other times it's not. But you can see how that can be pretty cool, especially if you could really get that mask working the stencil. You'd have this real smoky sort of aura coming out. So that's pretty neat. So all we did here was, do the local scale greater than 1. We could do less than 1 and greater than 0. Get something else there. You could just do the vertical, like the Y. It gets a little difficult because of the rotations and things, so that might not give you the exact effect you want. Or you'd have to be a little more smart about it, and like take rotation into consideration and do some like, I don't know, it would be weird. So we got that. It's just shrinking down. That's not looking too hot. You could also do some like texture fall off stuff. Like, let me try to explain it here. I actually haven't tried this yet, but we'll just see what happens. Let me see. Copy that. So Afterimage shader. Drop that in there. So let's say if I have to think about this. Oh, we can't do it on this one. What I'm trying to do, I need to do it like on Afterimage gradient map. This one. So I can have it at the end here. All right, cool. So Afterimage gradient map. So I'll have to think for a sec. What I want to do is take the intensity, and if it's, intensity like divided by 10 is like greater than or less than, the value here, then we'll discard it. Just gonna take me a sec to think about how to do it. So if color.r So intensity, basically 0 to 1, because we're doing 0 to 10 in the actual renderer. So if color is greater than... I want to fade out based on the white first. We could do the opposite. Let's just see what this does. Grab this one, do a little more how I was doing. Oh, it's showing it right here already, like the cutoff. It's not quite working. It's nice that the preview was so clear. See, that's what I'm trying to get at here. It's like a fade out. Let's try. Oops. The wrong thing. I gotta think for a sec. I actually don't want to look at the color. I want to look at, oh my god, this dog, dudes. Maybe if I just do this early. I think you can do it beforehand. Sorry about the dog, this is outrageous. Apparently he's a very good dog. There it is. Alright, cool. We need to go the other way. So, real sorry about the dogs. Such a professional video. As you can see, you can get some like more stylized like fade outs kind of. You'd maybe want to do something like a randomized texture so it wasn't so like uniform. You'd want to pass like another mask texture, you know, just a cutoff texture, and randomize the UVs a little bit. And just, you could do a projection, or you could just wrap it around, use the same UVs, and just fade it out, you know, how we've done in like some of our other videos. Trying to think if there's anything else we need. Let's go through it again real quick. You know, have our pool here. When it starts, you know, basically you drop this on a character, add this Afterimage pool script. Pool size is going to be dependent on just what works for your game. And your interval. You know, if your interval is bigger, you can have less on there. And it's going to depend on like the fade out time on your prefab as well. So your prefab needs a base, you know, the parent rather, which has the animator on it of your original character. You basically make a copy of it. You need your armature, you know, your bones, whatever you use to do a skin to mesh animator. And then your model. You make a copy of that, and on this base spot here, object, you create, transform rather, an Afterimage script, not the Afterimage pool, just the regular Afterimage. Apply any stuff that you may need to. You know, this is just looking at itself. I set it, but it just, you can do it automatically as well if you like. Intensity and power, time max, you know, this is how long they last. This is one that I didn't mess with. Just show you real quick. You know, this just makes them last longer. We might have some chunkiness because the pool size might run out. You know, just stuff like that. Oh, and again, we have this, you know, still animating at a lag. I like it at 0. It is pretty cool to keep it animating, but oh, I didn't explain the Stencil Mask thing, how it works yet. So wouldn't have been a big deal because it's all, we'll provide all this. You know, in your character drawing script, shader script, please, you have to draw to the stencil buffer. So how you do that is before like your, I have a few passes here because there's an outline and stuff. Basically, we only need it on the this final one. So, where did you go? There it is. I guess I do it first, so maybe it uses the whole thing. So yeah, I must. That makes sense because I wouldn't want it to go over the outlines. This Ref 255, I don't really know what it means. You can check out the Unity documentation. Right mask looks at the Stencil Mask property, which we set up here. And it's just an integer. You can see here, I don't know this exactly much. Or what this means exactly. But it was told to me, so I will also convey it. It has to be a power of 2, and there's only 8 layers possible. So I don't know if each time you write to it and it's a different number, it just decides it's on a new layer. Because it's like 1, 2, 4, 8, 16, 32. That's not 0 through 8. You know what I mean? So it's like, I don't know how it determines that exactly. But compare always. Pass, replace, not quite sure what that means, but basically it's, just writing to that Z buffer. Or that stencil mask. It's not necessarily a Z buffer. In fact, it isn't. I don't believe. And then in our Afterimage shader, we do a stencil, but we do read mask instead of write mask. We take a look at that same stencil mask, and this is a property set up here. And there's also a special property here. It's an enum compare function. That's just a built-in Unity thing. You'll want not equal. So if it's not the same layer, then it will, not write to that. And so it gets stenciled out. I think that ought to do it. Thanks again for your support. All this stuff will be made available. Again, it's going to be a little bit hard. I'll alter the script a little bit to be more generic. But the hard part's just going to be, applying your animators, setting up your prefab and setting up your image pool. You drop that in there and just drag that up, whatever prefab you make. Again, the dynamic one is just way too hard to set up everything, but you could do it. You would just drop in this instead. You'll run into some issues that you can probably fix yourself, or I could help you with if you just ask. Thank y'all so much. Again, if you have questions, ask me on Twitter at @CAS_kicks, or just ask on the video here. It's actually looking pretty hot. Yeah, big thanks. Support continues to grow. Development on this game continues to move along. I'm pretty excited about. Hit a milestone that I don't like to talk about stuff until it's like actually done. So, yeah, thanks again, and let me know if you have questions. Take care.